Okay, perfect. So we are going to start this PhD defense of Adèle Colas. I will start by introducing the jury. I'm the president elected for this jury. I'm Anatole Lecuyer, senior researcher here at Inria Rennes, and the other members are remotely. We have a first referee, Christopher Peters, associate professor at KTH Royal Institute of Technology. Another referee here is Damien Rohmer, professor at École Polytechnique. Then we have as examiners Nuria Pelechano remotely, associate professor at Universitat Politecnica de Catalunya, and also remotely Carol O'Sullivan, professor at Trinity College, Dublin. And here in the room we also have several PhD advisors, Ludovic Hoyet, research scientist at Inria Rennes. Then we have Anne-Hélène Olivier, associate professor at Université Rennes 2, and Julien Pettré, senior researcher at Inria Rennes, over there. And we have a guest star, a ghost jury member here today, Claudio Pacierotti, research scientist at CNRS. Adèle, it's your turn now, and you have 45 minutes of presentations followed by questions. Good luck.
Okay. So hello everyone, I hope you hear me. Thank you very much for coming to my PhD defense, and a particular thanks to the jury that could come to Rennes or attend remotely. Thank you very much. So today I'm going to talk about the work I've done during my PhD, which is entitled Interaction Field, a new intuitive method to sketch collective behavior. Crowd simulation is a computer-generated reproduction of real crowd motion. And this is a video of a typical settings that you could want to simulate in crowd simulation. A busy street with people walking around. Cross study have shown that the collective motion, the motion of a crowd, emerged from the local interaction between individuals. So to simulate this crowd, we need to be able to generate a variety of interaction between individuals. This is quite complex to do. And here we aim at suggesting a method, an intuitive method, to generate those variety of interaction. This is the context of my PhD. To simulate crowd, we use crowd model, the manner of which we simulate crowd. There are microscopic models that see crowd as a whole, for example, a fluid. And here you have, for example, an entry flow and an exiting flow in this kind of bottleneck section of the street. And you also have microscopic or agent-based model that simulate each person that we call agents once they are simulated individually. So here, each agent has its own motion, motivation, and properties. And their motion is influenced by the moving position of the agents around them. For example, they all have a global path leading them to their final location, but they have to adapt those paths, those trajectory, to what is around them. And here, to avoid the purple agent. This adaptation and reaction to other objects or agents around them is what we call local interaction. So what do we have as local interaction in crowd? The first and the most common is collision avoidance. You avoid people all the time when you are walking in a street, people or obstacle. So it's collision avoidance. Another one that we see a lot is grouping. Is that it has been shown that people tend to walk by group, 2 to 5 persons when they walk in a street. And here you have static group or dynamic group. What other kind of local interaction do we have? Actually, a lot. For example, here this person is grabbing a flyer. You're going to have another person that is going to get out of the crowd to wait for somebody. Here, you're going to have some people then going to stop and take a picture of the street here, and somebody else is doing the same thing just after. You're going to have a salesman that is trying to sell balloons, so he's going from group to group. You have a street show, so at here, people are going to stop, look at the show, or be slower at this point. You have here a person posing for a picture. You have another woman. You have tourists that are listening to a guide. And you're going to have here at the end of the street a truck being unloaded. So people going back and forth to this truck to unload it. Here you're going to have people queuing in front of a restaurant. and a security guard letting them in or not. And another type, or very, I would say, more particular kind of local interaction are the one performed by children, which are more unpredictable and random. So we saw there is a lot of local interaction. What do we have as model to simulate those kind of local interaction? Let's start with collision avoidance. We have several approaches. For example, force-based approach. Here, the idea is to simulate the collision avoidance by saying that the purple agent is exerting a repulsive force on the yellow agent. You also have velocity-based approach, and here the idea is more to sample through the velocity space and to attribute cost to each velocity, and to finally select the velocity with the minimal cost. You also have vision-based approach. Here, the idea really to mimic how humans do avoid each other by replicating a virtual retina that holds information in each pixel about collision avoidance here. For group formation, we can actually use the same type of approaches. For example, force-based, by adding an attractive force to the center of the group to keep the member together, but also by defining a new velocity set called here connection velocity set to sample on it and to keep those also members of the group together, or to say that each member of a group follow the member of the same group that are in their field of view. So we saw that there are a lot of solutions for collision avoidance and grouping. Those were only some examples. What other model do we have to simulate other local interaction? We have some model for following and queuing, as you see here. We also have Reynolds that try to bring more variety into the local interaction model by defining velocity rules over each new behavior you wanted to simulate. And you have here, for example, here define a proxy agent that acts as a placeholder to let the red agent go through the group of green agents. And this is basically all the local interactions that we can model right now that we have in the literature. So we see that there is a lack of variety because in the clips I showed you, we had other type of local interaction, other variety of local interaction. And this was only a 3-minute clip that I took, but we could have more particular settings, for example, a football game or a playground, and you would need to simulate also other variety of local interaction. So there is a lack of variety. Why? Well, even if you have the mathematical background to simulate those local interaction, it takes time. You have to define your new cost function or new force or do as Reynolds did and define new velocity rules for each new behavior that you have. So we want to ease this process of defining new behavior, and we're gonna first take a look into crowd-authoring technique. When we look at crowd-authoring technique, the first thing that we can note is that there is actually no method to define new local interaction. What we have here is method that enables to alter parameter, to tune parameter of already existing model. But we can get inspired by other kind of methods that allow us to drive other parameters or to define, for example, the global motion of the agent through the environment, which we call global path. Here we have some very inspiring method, for example, Yasin, that enable user to stitch continuously pieces of crowd simulation to build the overall environment. Or you have also Kim that encapsulate animated character into a cage that then can be bent through time and space. Then you also have McLavin that here enable user to combine layer of velocity fields. With those combinations, he can get the overall motion of the agent through the environment. And here we can note that the velocity field are pretty straightforward to understand. So you can see even for novices that the arrows are pointed to the next position of the agent. So we think velocity fields are intuitive to understand. There are also Patil that use velocity field, but here it enables the user to sketch. So the user can sketch navigation field and choose what is going to be the global motion, the global path of subpart of the crowd by sketching. And this is interesting because it uses sketching. We think that sketching is a viable way to define new behavior because it requires skills that everybody has, most people, I mean, say, and also because it's very flexible. You can do a lot with one stroke. So what do we have as a sketch-based technique in crowd-authoring? We have some technique to sketch the global path again of the agent through the environment. we have some technique to sketch the formation of the crowd. Okay? And we have, if we take a quick look into 3D body animation, some technique to sketch the motion through time of 3D model. But here, we lack the collectivity aspect that we seek. So to conclude on those sketch-based approach, they are very intuitive, they ease the creation process, but there is no sketch-based interface to sketch local interaction. And now to conclude on this overall state of the art, we saw that there are already very good models to, for example, simulate collision avoidance, grouping, or other kind of local interaction. But we still are lacking some variety of local interaction model. Now, when we took a look at global plan of crowd offering, there are a lot of nice interfaces that are intuitive that allows to, for example, choose the behavior through the environment of the agent. But we did not see any interface that allows to define new local interaction. And when we look at sketch-based interface, we can say the same. Very nice interface, but nothing here to sketch local interaction. So this is where we stand. We want to suggest a sketch-based technique to design the local interaction between the agents. So now I'm going to show you a kind of final result we could have with our technique. This is a top-down view of agents, so symbolized as disks, that are interacting with one another. And you see here it's kind of a hide-and-seek game taking place here, with the red agent trying to catch the blue agent that are hiding behind any yellow agent or any gray square. This is actually quite a complex interaction that would be difficult to simulate using the previous model I mentioned. But using our technique, it took only a couple of minutes. Our technique is called interaction field. It's a sketch-based technique to sketch the local interaction between agents. It has several components, several stages that I will describe during this presentation. So first, the user would have to sketch on a dedicated GUI that we developed. From the sketch, we can extract what we call interaction fields, which are the core of the method. Those interaction fields are then used in a 2D simulation to propel the agents. With all of those components, we can already do simulation in 2D using our method, and we can evaluate the usability of the method. So I will describe the evaluation process. Then I'm going to talk about the animation, how from the 2D trajectory we can animate on top of that to have 3D scenario simulation in 3D. And then I'm going to talk about some perspective for interaction field and talk about virtual reality sketching. But first, let's talk about the interaction field, which are the most important part of the method. What is an interaction field? An interaction field is a vector field that maps a 2D position to a 2D vector. And what is really important to know about interaction field is that it is always defined relatively to a source. That is here, this agent, this disk in red. But the source could be an obstacle or the environment. And here, what is really important to understand is that the interaction field is going to translate and rotate according to the own rotation and translation of the source, as you see here on this screen. And then we have several types of interaction field. We have velocity interaction field that map a 2D position to a velocity vector. And it's going to define the motion of the agent inside the field, impacted by this field. Here you have an example with the yellow agent that is propelled by the velocity interaction field. We also have orientation interaction field that map a 2D position to a 2D unit vector. And you see here in black, it is an orientation interaction field. So here it's going to define the rotation, the orientation of the agent inside. And if we combine the top velocity interaction field with the bottom velocity interaction field, we have this final behavior of the yellow agent being impacted by the two interaction field, making the yellow agent circle around the red agent and looking in the same direction as the red agent. So now that we saw what is an interaction field, maybe we can answer the question of how can we define interaction field? So how we can sketch the interaction field. To sketch the field, we developed a dedicated GUI that has several features. The first one would be to place your source inside the interaction field. So, as I said, it can be an agent, an obstacle, or the environment, but the position is going to be the pivot point of the interaction field, since it's going to translate and rotate according to this field. Then user can sketch what we call guide curve. It can be straight line or end-free stroke like this, with handle that can be displaced or reduced like this. And with all of the guide curves, you can get the global motion of the field by interpolation. How do we do that? Imagine you have, as input, several guide curves sketched by a user. Here, you want to know what is going to be the resulting velocity, V result, of the purple agent, in the case of a velocity interaction field. So you want to know what is going to be the resulting interpolation for the position x of the agent. What you would first need to do is to sample and discretize your guide curve into what we call control vectors in orange. Once you get your list of control vector, you can interpolate here to get your final velocity V result. For this, we use Shepard interpolation. Why? Because of this component here. Shepard uses inverse distance weighting, which means that it promotes a lot the distance between x and the position of the control vector. So it means that at the end, we have an interpolation that is very localized. And for example, here, the purple agent is going to have a motion that is similar to the closest guide curve. This is a way of doing this continuously. In our GUI, what we do is that we pre-compute a grid for the interaction field, and then we export this grid to propel the agent into the 2D simulation software. So with that, we can already do quite a lot of interaction. Here, I'm sketching on the left side, and you see the simulation process on the right side. And you see I can edit on the fly my interaction field, and at runtime, I would have the simulation that adapt to this interaction field. So this velocity interaction field makes the yellow agent circle around the red agent. We can add an rotation interaction field on top of that. With only 4 additional strokes, I have now my yellow agent that is looking while circling at the red agent. And this took only 30 seconds. So now we can talk about the last feature of the GUI, which are 0 areas. Once you get your field interpolated, you can define 0 area by erasing some vector like here. For orientation interaction field, it doesn't mean anything. It means that either the agent is going to take the previous orientation as new orientation, or it's going to take the velocity as orientation. For velocity interaction field, it means 0. So in this section, in those 0 area, the agents are going to stop. And if I'm applying this field onto this source here in red, I can have the green light, red light scenario. I don't know if you know this game. So here, when the red agent is looking at the yellow agent, they are in the 0 area, so they stop. But when it turns back to the yellow agent, they are in this area, so they go towards it. And this is how we can get this behavior. So here, what I could show you was the basic interaction field, velocity and orientation interaction field, with some tool to define them. And now we want something a bit more elaborated. We want to have more complex behavior out of those fields. So we want to create extension mechanism with the basic interaction field. For example, parametric interaction field that adapt to the parameter of the simulation. So here, imagine you want this behavior on the right. You have the behavior of the yellow agent that is adapting to the speed of the red agent. Here, the faster the red agent goes, the further away the yellow agent are expelled. To do that, we use a parametric interaction field with a parameter. Here is going to be the speed of the red agent. And the red agent is going to be the sources of our parametric interaction field. And then what we do is that we sketch key interaction field for key value of this speed. Those are the key interaction fields that we sketch. And then, at runtime, I can actually get the right interaction field for any value of the speed of the red agent by linear interpolation using this equation here. This is how you see the field is updating to the speed of the red agent. And then we can apply that to the simulation, and we get a similar scenario that we first showed you at the beginning. So here, please note that the speed is only an example of a parameter. It could be something else. It could be the size of an obstacle, if the obstacle would be the source of the parametric interaction field, or it could be the mindset of the agent. For example, if the agent is calm or nervous, the yellow agent would behave differently, which would be interesting. It could also be the sound that makes an emergency vehicle here. So imagine the louder the alarm is, the further away the yellow agent are expelled. Here it's not the case. It's just the previous parametric field that I'm applying onto this emergency vehicle. So here I presented you a parametric interaction field which parameter is a property of the source. We could think of other type of parameter. For example, the relationship between two objects of the scene. Here you see this interaction field here has as sources is emitted by the red obstacle. And it's rotating, which is weird because the red obstacle doesn't rotate. It's an obstacle. And still it's rotating. Why? Because we can change property of the interaction field, not only relatively to property of the source, but according to an external object that here is the blue agent. So the blue agent here is deciding on the rotation of the interaction field. To symbolize that, on the GUI, we sketch a link, this red dot line, and this means that we deport the rotation of the interaction field onto the position of the blue agent. And then we sketch the field such as the impacted agent are going to go on the opposite side of the obstacle. And this is the beginning of the hide-and-seek scenario. This is here an hider in yellow, the seeker, which is user control, and the hiding spot, the red obstacle. The hider is receiving the interaction field, and you see that wherever the blue agent is, the hider is always going to be on the opposite side regarding the blue agent's position of the obstacle. Here. So, I could tell you how we could sketch interaction field and sketch parametric interaction field to have more elaborated behavior. You already saw some results of simulation in 2D, but we're going to take a look a bit to the 2D simulation side, and maybe you're wondering what is happening when you have several interaction fields impacting one agent at the same time. So I'm going to explain that first. Imagine you want this behavior here. You have a crossroad scenario with the car in blue, the sideway in gray, the pedestrian in yellow, and the road in white. And you want to simulate the behavior of the car. So you know the car is going to interact with a lot of objects. For example, the road is going to be the sources of an interaction field to make the car turn. The car is going to be sources of an interaction field to be sure that they do not stump into each other. And the pedestrian are going to be source of an interaction field so that they are not run over. And you know that for all of those interaction fields, you have a final result, which is VK for all of the EFK, all of the interaction field. And now what I'm telling you is that at runtime, the result of all of those interaction fields impacting the car, so the behavior of the car, is going to be defined by the sum of all of those interactions. So you're going to have the final result, V, that is going to be the sum of all the VK, so all of the interaction field. And we can fancy that up a bit and add weight. Here, the weight allows us to prioritize some interaction over other. For example, here what we say, by saying that this weight, so the weight of this interaction field, is going to be the biggest, we say that we want, in priority, for the car to not run over the pedestrian, and then to not stump into each other, and then to follow the road. So we can prioritize the interaction field. And then maybe you're wondering what is happening with the pedestrian. How are they moving around? Well, they are responding to only one interaction field that is making them circulate around this crossroad. So here you have actually one group of pedestrians that are propelled to circle clockwise and another group that is propelled to circle counterclockwise. And we can note two things. Here, the environment is source of the interaction field. So it means that it actually works as would a navigation field of Patil. Second, they are propelled by only one field, but still they avoid each other. How is that possible? It's possible because we can combine interaction field with crowd algorithm, with other crowd algorithm. To understand how we do that, we first need to know how classical crowd simulation work. Usually what you do is that you set a goal for each of your agents. This goal is giving you a global path in gray, and this global path is giving you a preferred velocity, that is just a velocity going straight toward the goal. Then you're going to look around your agent, so here around the red agent, to see if possible collisions are happening here. So here you see, for example, the green agent you might collide with, the red agent might collide with. So you check for the neighbor states. And with those two information, you can include that into your local interaction crowd algorithm and get a new velocity. This is where social force is going to define the repulsive force, or where you're going to sample through the velocity to get the final minimal cost velocity. So where we use another crowd algorithm. And this is defining the final motion, and then you go back to your first step. With interaction field, we actually proceed very similarly, but when you check around the red agent for the neighbor state, you're also going to check for the interaction fields that can impact the red agent. Once you know all of that, you can sum all of them with the right weight, and this is giving you your preferred velocity. So you actually do, after that, as before, you include all of that into your crowd algorithm, and you get your final velocity, your final motion, and you go back to your first process. So this could work with any crowd simulation that work like this. Here we use humans, which is a crowd simulation developed by our team. So now with all of that, we have parametric interaction field. We have ways to combine different interaction fields together and to combine interaction field with other crowd algorithm. And now I can show you complex scenario using all of those techniques. First with the VIP scenario. Here we have a VIP in red, that is user control. We have an audience, which are the agent in yellow. And we have bodyguards in black. The VIP is going to be source of several parametric interaction fields. One that is impacting the audience in yellow. This is the exact same field that I presented to you a few slides ago when I introduced parametric interaction field. This field repels the yellow agent according to the speed of the VIP. Then you have the VIP that is sources of a parametric interaction field, especially for the bodyguard. This is also a parametric field that depends on the speed of the VIP to make the bodyguard regroup around the VIP when he stops and follow the VIP when he walks. And this is how we can get this final simulation. And so you see here the yellow agents are repelled and the bodyguard are regrouped around the VIP. And now what you also can note is that the bodyguard are avoiding all of the other agents, not using interaction field, but using ORCA, which is a crowd algorithm. As well, the audience are receiving interaction field, but they also are avoiding all of the other agents using ORCA. And they are using goal reaching. You see here, when they are expelled, they go back to their initial position because the goal is their initial position. So here what I'm saying is that we can combine interaction field with global path goal reaching. So we fully integrated interaction field into a crowd simulation, and it means that we see interaction field as an addition, not a replacement of anything, and it could be used with other existing techniques to simulate crowd. So now I can show you the results in 3D. I'm not going to talk about 3D just yet, but you can still see the same simulation animated in 3D. This scenario allows us to illustrate several points. First, the goal reaching, which is important. Second, here, an agent can be sources of various interaction fields. Here is the VIP. And we can select which group of agent is responding to which interaction field. For example, the bodyguard and the VIP are not responding to the same interaction field. Then I'm going to illustrate the second parametric interaction field that I presented to you, which is the interaction field parametric that depends on the relation between two objects. Here, this is the field that I already showed you with the basic identity scenario. We can actually complexify this interaction field very easily by applying this field to all of the yellow agent and to all of the gray square. So all the yellow agent and all the gray square are going to be sources of this interaction field. Then we have our seeker, which is user control, and which is the agent on which this parametric interaction field's rotation is reported. And then we're going to have our hider in blue, which is receiving all of the interaction field and is propelled by all of the interaction field. And you see here in 2D the result. So you see the blue agent is hiding behind every yellow agent and every gray square. And this is exactly the same scenario that I showed you at the very beginning, but with, I think, 5 hiders. And here, as before, the collision avoidance is handled by Orca. So we can also show you the same simulation in 3D. Still, I'm not going to talk about 3D just yet, just a bit after. But here, this scenario allows us to illustrate the modularity of interaction field. We can apply one interaction field to many different sources, which is, of course, less time consuming than to sketch a new field for each new sources. So with all of those components that I described, we can do some complex behaviors that I could demonstrate. Now it's time to wonder if we hold our hand of the bargain, and if we kept our promise, if interaction field is indeed intuitive to use. So we want to evaluate the intuitivity, usability, and efficacy of interaction field. For that, we conducted a user study with 22 naive participants that had to perform 7 independent tasks. So they were given tutorials video, 5, about the concept of interaction field. So velocity, orientation, parametric, etc. And so the video were given in order of increasing complexity. After each video, they were given tasks related to the concept. And after each task, they were given Likert scale question about the task. At the end of the whole user study, they were given a SUS questionnaire. Here you can see a participant that is performing task 6, and you see the settings they had. So there were 2 screens, one with the sketching GUI and one with the simulation to see and to edit the field on the fly. Then the tasks were given as instruction, so written instruction that describes the final behavior that we wanted them to sketch with the interaction field. And they were given as example video. You see some example for 3 tasks here. Those example videos were meant to clarify the instruction first and also to give them a kind of an expected result they could aim at. Then with some results, we could measure the task it took them to perform, the time it took them to perform the task, sorry. So it took them between 2.24 minutes and 5.43. It took them in average 3.09 minutes to perform a task, and maximum a participant took 2 hours to perform the overall study. Then we could grade the task. We predefine before the user study criteria according to each task that the participant were supposed to check to have a good grade. For example, here we have task 2. The goal of task 2 was to make an agent circling at 5 meters around the red agent counterclockwise. Those agents were supposed to be attracted if they were too far off the red agent and repulsed if they were too close of the red agent. And this is actually the criteria that we gave to the expert to grade the task. Here you see in those videos the 22 results of the 22 participants in green, and in purple the trajectory of the given example that we gave them when we introduced the task. And you see here that even though they did not all get the counterclockwise right, they could all have the behavior, most of the criteria checked, for example, for task 2. And this is how we could get the good grade between 9 and 10. Also, we tested the reliability of our grade with an inter-rater reliability test, FLES-Kappa, and we got a good reliability. now we can talk about some qualitative results. After each task, we ask them about the ease of the task, that is, that which answers are in blue here, and about their satisfaction toward the end result of the task, which answer you see in orange. And you see here that for all of the tasks, in average, it's above 5/7, and even most of the time above 6/7, which means that they found the task easy, fairly, and they were happy about their results. So they did think they succeeded in the task. And we would also analyze the SUS questionnaire that we gave them. So it's an alternative version of the Brock questionnaire because we did not want really to test the usability of the interface, so of the GUI. We wanted to test the usability of the method interaction field. And here we had to take out some questions, but we got the final grade of A-. We can also say, and point out, which is good, that all participants could understand all the concept of interaction field and they could perform all the tasks. So, the user study did demonstrate the usability of interaction field. Now I'm going to talk finally about the animation. So how we can animate on top of the 2D trajectory. This is interaction field coupled with the state machine unity. The state machine are usually what we use with crowd simulation. And you see here there are some foot sliding, orientation, and velocity issue. Why? Well, because usually in crowd simulation, we don't control the orientation of the agent, which is the case with interaction field. So we have to find another way to make those results more natural and more organic. We decided to use motion matching, which was first defined by Pettré, and then we bought a plugin on Unity, the Unity store, that we coupled with interaction field. To do that, we gave as input the trajectory that we got out of our 2D simulation software, humans. Then motion matching is taking those trajectory in and looking through a library of animation and to find the animation that fit the most this trajectory that we gave it as input. To define this library of animation, we had to perform the animation ourselves by recording them using motion capture. So motion capture is really time consuming. You have to have a lot of animation to build a big library, but you input real animation inside the motion matching. So motion matching did indeed help us to filter out the unrealistic motion of interaction field. Because interaction field is a technique, a sketch-based technique, it's a bit of what you see is what you get. So we could have very unrealistic motion with, for example, orientation and velocity that did not match. Here, since we give real animation as input, we had altered animation as output, and we could also, using our library, couple orientation and velocity. But the downside is that this technique overrides the simulation. So here, the simulation, the 2D simulation, does not have the final say on the 3D simulation. So the user, the sketch, do not have the final say. It's motion matching that does. And the idea here would be to find the sweet spot between the responsiveness to the trajectory and the quality of the motion. A way of doing that is to always add other animation that were registered on purpose for some interaction field. And this is what we did with this scenario. This is a scenario in virtual reality. What you see is the view of the user immersed in virtual reality. And you see when he moves, the virtual characters are hiding behind the trees. So he's a giant in this scenario, that's why they are small. They are hiding behind the tree, and when he stops, the virtual characters are coming towards the user, as you see here. So this is a giant scenario, and we'll describe how we did this. Here, the giant is, so the user is sources of a parametric interaction field. When it doesn't move, here, the agent goes towards the giant. When the giant moves, the user, the agent are answering to this interaction field, which is the sample identical interaction field. And this is how we can get this behavior in 2D and in virtual reality. So here also you see an interaction field, which is the one emitted by the tree, that is parametric according to the speed of the agent, but also according to the relation between the tree and the agent. So 2 times parametric interaction field. So we could demonstrate this in several occasions. In Laval Virtual, we got feedback from professionals that were happy about the expressivity of the animation, but also with the interactivity they had with the virtual character. In Fête de la Science, we had children test this out, and well, they were very into it. They almost fell from the stage. So they were very, very into it. Now I can a bit conclude with the contribution of interaction field. So I could present interaction field, which is a sketch-based technique to sketch the local interaction between agents. I could show that with this method, we can add variety quickly of local interaction. I could show the usability of interaction field. If you're not convinced, this is also a picture of Fête des Sciences with children of primary school that could tackle the GUI, and they could perform tasks of the same level of the first task of the user study. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the limitation and the perspective of interaction field. First, with the limitation. I'm going to talk about scenarization. How we can schedule interaction field through time, and how we can, for example, trigger interaction field according to some event. I'm going to illustrate this limitation with the museum scenario. Imagine you want to simulate visitor looking at paintings in a room of a museum. So this is the room, you have the painting in blue. Each painting is going to be source of a velocity and an orientation field that make the agent look at the painting. Then you're going to have each agent, that is sources of a parametric interaction field that make the other visitor step aside of their field of view when they stop. Because when they stop, it means that they are looking at the painting and they don't want anybody in front of them. When they move, it's only RVO collision avoidance. Then we have the environment that is sources of a velocity interaction field to propel the agent through the room. So one group of agents is going to circulate clockwise and another group is going to circulate counterclockwise. And here you have the 2 groups with the 2 colors. And here you can see the final 2D and 3D simulation. So you see the agent looking at the painting and navigating through the room. And it's happening pretty smoothly. So maybe you're wondering why it's a limitation. Well, I'm actually not telling you something. Here, I'm setting on and off the field. If you look at the yellow agent here, he's going to stop at the painting, wait a bit, and then go back to circling in the room. To do that, I'm setting on and off the field. First, you follow the environment interaction field. When you arrive in front of a painting, I set on the clock, I deactivate the environment interaction field, and is only propelled by the painting interaction field. When the clock is done, when time is off, I set on again the environment interaction field and deactivate this one so that it's circling again through the room. Because if I didn't do that, it would not stop kind of circulating while looking at the picture. And the issue is that all of that is scripted. And scripting is bad because we lose usability, we lose the intuitivity of interaction field. So we really want to have mechanism to schedule the field, to scenarize, so trigger the field according to some event, and to combine also the field according to other type of combination, for example, logical combination. We want to integrate all of that into the GUI in an intuitive way. So maybe some research would have to be done to keep all of this intuitive, because interaction field, key aspect is its intuitivity. Now I'm going to talk about some perspective for interaction field, and I'm going to talk about virtual reality sketching. Why virtual reality sketching? Well, because it's a powerful, virtual reality it's a powerful tool. It's used to validate trajectory out of crowd model, and it's used to perform proxemic study. So how immersed user react to virtual character. And we think that interaction field could have a key role in those applications. We also want to test the advantages of virtual reality and of 3D sketching. So we developed a prototype of interaction field in virtual reality, to sketch the field in virtual reality. Which is nice about this method, this interface, is that the designer is immersed in the simulation. So he can go out of the simulation mode, sketch the field in sketching mode, and go again, try the field in simulation mode. So there's a quick testing and editing. Then he's also an actor of the scenario. So he's experiencing the field that he sketched firsthand. He's not an outsider in God mode that is sketching from afar, which is interesting. Finally, we can use the motion of the designer to create interaction field. Those are the features that we have so far in this interface. First, we can sketch and edit the guide curve. We can create zero area as in the 2D editor. And we can display a top-down view to give us a more global idea of the field when the fields are too big. And then we can use acted guide curve and act the guide curve. Here the idea is that the designer can register its own trajectory and use this trajectory registered as guide curve. And you see here. So we can act the interaction and then use this acting as a guide curve to create interaction field. If we were to if we think that acted guide curve could be even more intuitive than sketching. Maybe the output will be more realistic because the input comes from a real trajectory. We could also use this method to generate animation. Imagine you would have a mocap system on top of you, or you can reconstruct animation with your controller or your headset. You would bring at the same time new animation to motion matching, for example. If we were to develop this a bit, we would definitely add the idea to register the orientation and build orientation interaction field at the same time. This would help us to, for example, couple the two, which was an issue before. We would also maybe have other rotation recorded, for example, head torso, and then we would have layer of interaction field. We would want to always keep that relatively to sources, and then we'd have ID to reconstruct and generate animation with those layers of interaction fields that maybe would not be 3D anymore. If we take that a bit further, we would have active interaction. Here we would just get rid of the field ID and register a whole motion, for example, a whole 3D motion. The source would be different. It would be maybe subpart of a model and not a model overall. And then we would keep the modularity of interaction field and apply this interaction to other sources, for example, a door handle, a ball. And then we would need ID to reconstruct and adapt this animation to all of those sources. And for example, we thought of using machine learning animation with some work that already work on that. So this is one possible way to extend into a future direction for interaction field. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the perfect timing.
Thank you.
So it's time for questions. So we are starting with Christopher. Christopher Peters, can you hear us, Christopher? And are you ready to enter the floor and ask a few questions?
I am indeed. So let me start off by thanking Adèle very much for not only a very interesting thesis that really got me excited about the possibilities of the work, but also a very clear and concise overview of the thesis area now. So I think it deals with a very important problem of how do we define complex behaviors without having to have experts who are able to not only program, but maybe tune parameters and do all of this sort of complicated stuff. So I think it's really nice from that perspective. I also really like the idea of a first-person perspective that you've shown within the simulation. I think that's very important as well. And of course, this basic building block that you've introduced in your thesis of the interaction field seems like it has a low entry point in terms of complexity of the behavior it can generate, but potentially a very high ceiling. And I think one of my main tasks reading the thesis was trying to think, well, where is that ceiling? Because when I look at some of the simple scenarios, certainly I get the idea of how the interaction field is used, but that ceiling, there seems to be, it seems pretty high. There seems a lot of possibilities in it. So I'm going to come back to that issue, but first I think that the main thing I was wondering, it's a fairly basic question, I think, was given the aim of the system, the intended user group is very important. And it mentions complete novices, it mentions as well experts, maybe viewer game developers for some of the studies. But I'm wondering, who exactly is this system intended for? Is it, you know, what are their intended competencies? And as well, does this include familiarity? Because I can definitely see as people use this system more and more, even if they're initially novices, maybe they want more and more complexity out of them. So who would you specify, you know, specify the intended end users as actually being?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's interesting. I thought about this quite a lot because I think there is at the end I have two interfaces, one in virtual reality that is not concluded yet, but one in 2D. I think the one in 2D could be really used by all the people that work in artistic area that use simulated behavior. For example, animated movies, video game, etc. So those might be artists that need to that would be very basic novice that would require specific behavior for a specific simulation, simulated scenario. This is why it's important to keep that very intuitive for those type of user. Typically for, I would say, movie maker, for example, that would need to have some behaviors for computer-generated character, etc. Then with the virtual interface, I think maybe virtual reality is not yet accessible to so many people, and maybe then I'm not thinking of the same group of users. Maybe it would be more really professionals that, for example, do conduct a proxemic study, and that do need to have this testing of the behavior to see what it feels to be as the user of their proxemic study. So they would be maybe more used to virtual reality, because when you're not used to it at all, I don't think being directly immersed and sketching the field in virtual realities is more intuitive, really, maybe. So maybe I think the 2D is more reliable and more what naive users are used to. Voilà.
Yeah, so I think in this, it seems to me there are different user groups, you know, and if we only take the case, if we leave the maybe first perspective viewer version out of it, and we just look at the interface, I guess one question, and this was particularly, I had this experience myself as I was looking, first of all, at the technical description of how these fields work, and then how they build up and how they lead to behavior. And I guess it would be the same for end users, is how do we know what's possible with the system? So if I have a given requirement, maybe, you know, if I'm a kid, I might be messing around with the system. Of course, to movie makers, though, what's exceptionally important to them, they want a good degree of automation, but they also have control issues because they will want certain outcomes from the system. So from that kind of end user perspective, how do we know what sort of behaviors are possible through the system and what sort of behaviors aren't really possible?
Yeah, so we describe interaction field and the possible output really as describing an agent velocity or orientation at different position relatively to another object. So it can be a bit maybe not so clear for end user. I know. I think really, indeed, interaction field cannot be used to do everything. I think everything that maybe use motion relatively to another object, maybe something like this could be understood by novices. And frankly, even then, I would advise them to try. And the more you try, and the more you kind of understand what interaction field can do, and also what the interpolation can do, because sometimes you have some issue with the interpolation being not as precise or too precise according to what you want to do. Yeah, that's to exactly give an idea of what would be the basic limit for an end user. I wouldn't know specifically, except. So yes, it's really, the idea is really to have this relativity between two agents, for example. It's not meant to be something to be the whole environment with triggering stuff happening right now, actually. So in that idea, I think you should try it out to really understand what you could do and not do. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not a great answer.
And that was my impression as well, because as I was reading the possibilities, I couldn't really figure out what was possible until maybe I saw the scenarios. And I think that's something that would be really interesting to think about, would be, are there some ways of defining the types of behaviors that could be output or not? Sorry, and in some circumstances, I think I also noticed that, of course, it depended maybe on the motion library for the character, for example. So you want variation of motions. That's not really so much handled by the system. Maybe it's put towards the character animation part. So again, while the components, these interaction fields again seem fairly straightforward. Again, I'm left with questions about how far it could go and how complex you could get with it. And of course, in the thesis, you mentioned lots of really good ideas that got me very excited. So different weightings for multiple overlapping interaction fields, turning them on and off as you've shown. And I think it's important, for people to be able to get a grip, no matter what their expertise level, on what could be possible with the system and whatnot. So I guess then with respect to that, do you have any views on what the main limitations are? Because the thesis does mention, for example, the agents becoming indecisive under certain situations.
Yeah.
We also have the idea that some issues need to be fixed by providing going down to the individual character motions and animations. Where do you think the main limitations are?
To me, realism, I think really right now, in my opinion, it won't be used so much right now because of the lack of scenarization, of how you can only have, I showed complex scenario, but it was only one behavior happening, and you don't have several things that could happen in a 1 minute simulation. So it was very short simulation with one behavior. I think to have more storytelling and possibilities, and if I'm thinking about this group of users that would be movie maker and all of that, they would need that. They would need this storytelling and scenarization. And this is, I think, would be the first, the idea of combining to see what would be the combination to trigger on and off according to some trigger, some event. This would be, I think, right now the limitation, so that it can be used in a more technical industry settings, that I would say.
Right, and when I looked at the idea, actually, one of the first ideas it reminded me of was an older idea called smart objects, where you would actually you'd provide attributes into virtual objects, and they would tell the agents how to use them in the environment, rather than the agents having to be intelligent and so on. And I was also actually reminded with these interaction fields of something like Boyd's or sensory field, at least at some level of abstraction, where the agents within this field are the ones that triggered or react or accounted for. So for example, if we were to take a system like Boyd's, I mean, it seems also to have a fairly simple basis where you just have a couple of straightforward rules, but you get complex emergent behaviors out of it. Could for example, interaction fields be used as they are to create a Boyd's-like system where you've many agents interacting, do you think?
So you're wondering if we can have, for example, many agents activating, be sources of one field or something like that?
Yeah, so in Boyd's, for example, there's a field, but it's the sensory. It's a sphere rather than maybe a rectangle, and you have, for example, alignment where all of the Boyd's try to head in a similar direction. You've got cohesion where they try to stay together somewhat, but you've also got separation, which is an opposite forces. Is that the sort of thing that would be probably too complicated for your system, or is this the sort of behavior that could work somehow?
I think, to be honest, there are other work that would be better for doing that. I know there are some work that actually do have this kind of agent that combine several agents together, so big agents that combine several agents and then use to also divide group and etc. I think here it would be complicated to have interaction field with, for example, several sources. You would need to attribute rules over who is impacted what. So kind of, again, those combination would be required. So as it is, I think it would be difficult. For example, if you use the giant in virtual reality, but you have 2 users in virtual reality, you would need to say, well, either the sum of the 2 velocity of the giant is 0, either there is the sum that is superior to 0. And right now, it would be a weird kind of a simulation to just as it is, use it. And so, yeah, the answer is to conclude as it is. I think there might be better solution. And we should work more on what is happening when you have a group that are emitting one interaction field. We thought about parametric interaction field with the density of a group being the parameter, but this is not included yet in the interface, but it would just be more development and have this density as a parameter. Right now, yeah. It's not in.
That was one of the very exciting possibilities that I saw, where I started then thinking, oh, well, as this system gets more and more complex, maybe it's not necessarily, I guess, complex from the back end, the technical interaction field where you've multiple weightings. I guess where do you think the complexities are? Are they in the interface in that case?
The complexity of the interface of the GUI, you mean?
Yeah, so I guess as for example, maybe you would like different weightings of the interaction fields, or they could switch on and off. It seems like some of those could be fairly straightforward on the technical back end.
Yes,
but I guess for different user groups, yeah, the challenge could be then, according to the user group, how do we put this into the interface for them?
Yes, well, the first thing, when I did the user study, most of the time, like adults or even the children in the Fête des Sciences could understand that the guide curve were implying the small arrows of the vector field. So this was understood quickly. What they had more issue understanding was really the relativity towards the source. So once the source was moving, they were a bit lost about how, when it's turning, the field change, how it's not fixed to some place. This is also why the first task of the user study as the third task, sorry, it was the first task with the source that is moving, and actually has had less good results as about the ease and etc. So this was really the first thing that people had trouble understanding, was how it could be relative to this one object that moves, and this was the first thing that was difficult. And then the parametric field. Also, but not as much. Weirdly, it was okay relatively to this first understanding. Once they got the relativity to the source, I think they understood more easily the parametric interaction field, which was weird to me, but yes.
Great, thank you. And I guess another aspect then that relates maybe to these, let's say, use cases for different user groups or different groups who have different competencies and aims. For me, as I was reading through it, really, as these the interaction fields move around and agents become affected by them more, their behaviors are triggered or they're switched off. I was thinking straight away of behavior that could be jerky and maybe not so smooth. Now, it is mentioned in the thesis that coupling this somehow with character animation would significantly improve the animation, but does that fix all of these problems with the maybe discontinuities or abruptness caused by sudden interaction field transitions?
Yeah. So really, motion matching. So it's the animation technique which shows at the end. We did not try, for example, machine learning animation. We did not try those. Motion matching, it has a lot of advantage because I think it's indeed gets rid of all the jerkiness, but we arrive with also additional issue. And definitely the idea that the result position of the agent is not exactly where it should be according to the simulation. So you can be very precise in sketching your interaction field. The end result, for example, in hide and seek, the guy could be not hidden at the end. So if you don't have the, so it's a shame because it's, even though in 2D is really behind the obstacle, if the animation is, you don't have a good standing animation, it is going to be on the side of the obstacle. So you have to always do, this is what we did for the giant scenario to be able to demonstrate this in several situations. You have to really do a mock-up of you acting the interaction field. It's what I did. I played the person being hidden behind each of the imaginary obstacle, and this is how I could get better result. But I think if you don't have this possibility, then you would be at a limit where at some point the animation won't follow exactly the field that you sketched.
So I think I'm running near the end of my time. So for my final question, I will branch out into a different area, a different application domain, which of course people who are interested in crowd simulation often dabble in as well, and that's mobile robot, navigation and so on. With what you mentioned about the motion mapping and the importance of the behaviors of, I guess, what was referred to as a vehicle model, you've got your humanoid model. How well do you think this system could be mapped onto robot control? For example, a robot that's wheeled or, moves on wheels as opposed to bipedal.
Well, I'm not at all a professional about, an expert about robot. We have so many people here that maybe know more about robot. But here, I think since you don't care about the human aspect, maybe it would work well to have something on wheels that would be a bit more jerky, but that would go exactly where you want it to go, I think. So at the end, if you don't care about the believability of the behavior, maybe it could be, indeed interested to have this with a non-human character or vehicle character. And this is also why I like the 3D animation, because you could choose what model you put on top of those, and this would be independent from the sketching that you do. And then the animation would say, so if you have an animation of a bee, the bee, it would not be the same than an animation of humans, and you would not care as much if the orientation of the velocity is not exactly as you want. I guess is what I would say.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. So I leave the floor to Damien Rohmer, professor at École, Polytechnique, and the other referee of this work.
Thanks a lot. And so I will first start by saying that I'm basically very happy to be here because I discovered your work at. It's not on.
Maybe this one is better.
No, it's green. Okay. So I discovered your work at Eurographics. I thought it was very interesting, and so I'm very happy that you invited me for being one of the referee of your PhD. So basically, I found already that your report was very clear and well illustrated, but it was even more the case for this oral presentation. Basically, you had it was. How we say it, like crystal clear, I would say. Very well illustrated and animated. I think there was like every slide with an animation, which is kind of very high standard, I would say. And so congratulations for all the time that you spend in preparing all these very well illustrated things. So
Thank you so
it's
much.
very pedagogical. Also, with respect to your work, you've got lots of very clever ideas. Somehow, each of them, it sounds simple, but basically it's also their values, because when we have a system that works well with simple ideas, this is also the system that have the largest use case and that impact the most. And so I really believe that your contribution actually it's providing a new fresh ideas to this field, and I'm sure that it will be continued after basically and extended for agent animation. And also, of course, as you showed a little bit in your oral and even more in your in your manuscript, you spend lots of time doing a user study, careful user study, and I saw that you spend also time to present your work, for instance, with application to childs.
Yes.
And so I think it's very appreciable to have this kind of demonstration and showing the work.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm also having a few questions. Most of them are kind of related to how much you can push the sketching-based interface. Because the core of your idea is to use this sketching, but at some point you go back to procedural approach with weights, with triggers, and I'm wondering basically, is there a hope for improving the system in going even further away using a sketch-based interface? So for instance, the first one would be about the level of detail. How could you use, or is it feasible to use a sketch-based interface to control a little bit more the level of details of your animation? So far you have a kind of one-to-one interaction, okay? So basically, if you have 10 different people, you would need to sketch really 10 different interaction, or otherwise you just plug the exact same field around each person that has the same type of character. But no, we had a question about a group, and we started to discuss about group, and I was wondering basically, would it make sense to have something more hierarchical to define the general level of group behavior, and maybe some individual in the group will have a slightly different behavior in specific cases, and maybe I don't want to have a fully, totally different sketch, but maybe the general one, and then just add detail locally. Do you have any thoughts about extending this idea to control a little bit more the level of details using sketching?
So it's a bit also about the varieties that can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a general motion. Usually, also when you show your example, they have to be thought from the beginning. You know, when you show the hide and seek, I think, well, first, we will never manage to do this hide and seek. And yes, you manage to do it, but it has to be thought really from the beginning in a clever way. So, but this is not always how we proceed. You know, when I'm an artist, I will just do the general motion, and then looking at the general motion, I will think, oh, maybe I want to hide beside this tree. And then I would just add something on top of that, not redo entirely the sketch from scratch. So can I use an iterative approach to add more and more details somehow, or more and more behavior?
Okay. So I know that we could already have some use of coloring the vector to change some property of the agent. This we already done to change the speed of the impacted agent according to its maximum speed. So we will brush the it's written, but we color the vectors, and according to this color, it means something on the scale according to the maximum velocity of the agent. This is something we could already do. I have a slide somewhere, but I think this would be something like using sketching still and a bit iterate. To have more iteration without adding a new field, I'm not sure.
Or maybe
I
it
never
can be
thought about
adding a
that,
new
actually.
field and then having some specific weights. How do I combine? This is also related to the combination.
Yes.
Because so far you had some weights, but I imagine it was more or less done by hand using code.
Yes, it was in
Can I
XML.
have something from sketching to use cleverly the weights?
Yes. So right now, I actually just coded it a bit more to have the possibility to have several fields inside the GUI. So, okay, that's it. Then the idea would be to see the combination that is happening and then to select what combination you want. So to have actually just your scene in the GUI, because right now you have one field. So to have the overall ID with the GUI, it's not possible. So I have the possibility to have several interaction fields. I want to be able to show the combination of those fields and then to say that the intuitivity is very important. I don't want to have a huge Photoshop kind of very complex that you take months to understand. It would be very, for me, a bit best to have keep the intuitivity to see what would be the combination and then to be able to change this combination to add Gaikov maybe to this section that would be combined of the two to change what would be the combination just of two fields, for example. This would be doable, I think, pretty easily. I kind of creating a new field with the intersection of two fields, having weight that depends on the simulation. For example, the distance between two agents, the number of agents, so dynamic weight also is something that could be. So as well, we have to think of some way of doing this intuitively. And this would be, so we could think of some way having a bigger, so having another kind of link, but that link weight and not, or link field together and not only having bigger source according to what you want the field to impact, something like that would be some idea. I don't have very specific.
And do you think sketching is the right tool, or do you think we should forget about it and still stick to the scripting?
No, if we can do a thing sketchingly, sketching is good. I think at some point it's true that you can do a lot with a hand stroke, but can you do everything? I'm not sure. So it would be thinking of visual way that are understandable, that are not too different from what people are used to, because if it's too different, then people are lost. To have this intuitivity. Maybe not exactly by sketching, but something very similar, hiding them in a pile or having something very visual of those type of interaction, of those new combination, for example, would be some way. I'm also wondering if virtual reality could enable us to have more weight, more control over some other stuff by keeping the intuitivity. I'm wondering if acting the field would be more intuitive, would be understandable for people or not. Not at all, maybe not. I didn't at the time to do the user study, but also I'm wondering what could bring, because I think it's interesting to have virtual reality used to create with your whole body. I think it's interesting to have that. But we will need to see in user study, because you learn a lot with user study about how people do use your interface. It's not always how you think it's going to happen. That does happen. So yes, I would say we can do more definitely on the GUI side, using sketching or intuitive manner of very visual manner of combining the field.
Yeah,
I hope it's
I'm kind of convinced also that using sketching, you have quickly the general behavior.
Yeah.
While if you want some very carefully crafted detail, then, as you say, the virtual reality, when you record really the individual character, give you much more details, but it also takes you more time to really.
It takes you more time, and maybe you don't understand as much what you do.
Yeah.
So it's more hidden kind of stuff that's happening.
It's to mimic what
so
you want
I don't know if you understand the control that you have that much.
And then it's probably combining both is probably something interesting.
Yeah, I think having the 2D and the virtual reality right now would be good to have more refined in the VR and have the global in the 2D right now as it is. It's a good combination, I think. Yes.
Okay. Then the second one is more about the time-related thing. Because you show that you define a velocity field, but on your velocity, you don't have a very fine control over the magnitude of this velocity, right? At some point, I want my character to accelerate, to decelerate. It can depend on lots of parameters. I may, so far in your simulation, you can change of behavior instantaneously. Like suddenly we stop, suddenly we start. So it's good for stop and start. But in real life, we usually have a bit of delay when we change our behavior. So once again, I would wonder how far can we go? How far you think it's interesting to go with sketching? Because there is some article in the literature that does sketching for space-time animation, where there is really the time and the delay, the velocity really in the sketch. should we include that? Do you have ideas about way to include that or not?
It would be interesting to include having the time, but it would be as well with the scenariization. So yeah, right now you have kind of a slider that allows you to do the parametric interaction field according to a parameter, which looks a lot like animation.
A bit indirect, right?
Yes, it's a slider that you control the speed on, and you define the field. It looks like keyframe of animation. That's why we call them key interaction field. If we would have to have the time, we would on top of that add something else, or maybe erase the other parametric key slider kind of ID, and it would be as well, I think, this idea of scheduling and having a field, and maybe so the sketch would be the overall scene through time, so that you could change with the slider and see the final motion through time, and then sketch the field according, and then be able to zoom in this field, change the parameter and change the parametric if you have in this field, and have a more global interface with all the scene and the time management on this side. This would be an idea. You can see fields change through time as well, and it would work similarly, I think, than it would work.
And so far, you didn't use the velocity of the sketching when you sketch the field. You don't record basically how fast you do it, or you don't take into account the pressure.
I do that in virtual reality.
Okay.
A bit.
Okay.
Because I wanted to keep the velocity of the motion of the acting stuff. Right now, c'est pas très clair. What we have in the 2D is this brushing, this coloring of the vector that change the velocity according to the impacted agent. So for me, it's already nice because you have more variety according to what the agent would be old, or it would be a vehicle or something, it would change. And also, during the user study, I noticed that the velocity, the control of the velocity, because we had pilot study, and they could control a bit the velocity with the guide curve. It was not well understood. It was not they could not understood with the interpolation used as it is how they could influence the velocity of the field right now. Okay. So but in virtual reality it does depends on how fast you sketch, not on the pressure, but how fast you sketch and how fast you act.
All right, thanks. Maybe a shorter, simpler one. Somehow, when you visualize the result of your sketch at the current stage, you see this vector field, which is something that we can understand or up to some point. When I look at the vector field, I understand something, not necessarily all the timing of the trajectory somehow of the agent is something a little bit different in my mind.
Okay.
Because the vector field is really a global fixed set of arrows. And if there is several vector fields, it's even harder to understand what is going to be the final trajectory. I was wondering if you tried other kind of visualization, like looking at the streamline, looking at the line integral convolution that give you somehow the feeling of the flow around an agent instead of looking at this purely static vector.
So kind of relative according to the source. Relative
yes. But then you would see somehow really a motion around it.
Yeah. Okay, I see. So something that would be more movable. I see. This would be interesting. I did not try. I did not try. We thought about some type of, for example, acceleration map and some other type of thing. We were kind of we thought that velocity was still the most intuitive. To understand for a naive user.
Yeah, because basically
the arrows,
looking at velocity flow is complex.
Yeah, that's true. So that's why we stick with it. And since the user study showed good results, we thought that it was a good choice.
Also, maybe just pushing some fake agent, like transparent, to see what
maybe.
would be the trajectory in this.
It would be more visual. Definitely, yes. Indeed, when I show Fête des Sciences, there were children that were very young, maybe 6, 5, that try, and they could not understand as well. They could not understand the velocity field. So it's true that they were completely lost with the arrow making the field and making the motion that they could not grasp this. So indeed, it's not that intuitive either. So having this animation of the agent moving around would be maybe more, for example, more intuitive to understand even.
Okay. Do you still have time or not? Yeah. Okay. So just a last one. Should be easy too. Have you thought about adding additional constraint on the vector field? Because, for instance, I go back to the question about can you apply it on robots? And actually, on my sheet, I had, can you apply it on animals? Because why do we focus on humans? Of course, humans is important, but could your method be applied to robots, animals, other kind of things?
Yeah.
And then I guess all the trajectory would be constrained, but by the possibilities. For instance, if it's robots and wheels, of course, I cannot turn 90 degrees directly. So would it be a way, and have you thought or have you tested to integrate specific constraints to your vector field in order to have trajectory that are more plausible in specific situations?
Yeah, we could do that. We could definitely have, for example, some angular constraints, which are not right now, and this would be something that could be really added easily, and that I think could give. But we could change then the angular constraint according to if it's a horse, if it's something else. They don't move exactly the same way. Right now, I think that a good point is the animation, because then you can have very weird stuff on the sketching, but the animation is gonna, according to the motion you registered, have this behavior, humans behavior if we have humans, or other type of behavior if we have other type of regarding. But then how do we do mocap on a bee? I'm not sure, or something else. So we have this issue then of registering motion for animals. We have to find or
it's
machine.
going to be fun.
Yeah, I can do that. This would be fun, yeah. Or I don't know, cats or stuff. It would change, but I think if we do, but then it would be nice, because with one interaction field, you apply the animation that would change according to your model, and you would have different behavior according to your model. So this would be nice, but then I don't know how to record cat stuff. I don't know. Maybe machine learning can help us as well, since it has all the answers. I don't know.
Great. Thanks a lot. And I give back the mic.
Thank you very much, Damien. So now I will pass the microphone to Nuria Pelechano from UPC. Nuria.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first of all, I agree with Chris and Damien. I think this is a really nice thesis with a very good idea behind it that appears to be simple but can achieve very nice results. And for those that come from the field of crowd simulation, which have been fighting for so many years on how you tweak all these different parameters to get specific behaviors, having this kind of interface to do it, in a more graphical way through sketches seems like a really nice step forward. So congratulations on that. So about that, I've got many questions, but I will start actually with a comment, because I think when I read the document, there were a few parts where either I was missing some information, or I wish there was something additional, like images showing me exactly how this works. And this is something that you've covered very nicely on the presentation.
Yes.
So for example, the part on how you sketch keyframes for a particular behavior.
Yes.
I wish there had been some sequence of images on the document. So then when you explain it now in your presentation, it was very clear.
Yes.
I think just as a comment, because I know in France you still can do some changes in the thesis afterwards.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yes,
so I would recommend that you've done really nice images. I can see how much time you've spent preparing this presentation. So I think it's not much additional work. You just get some of these screenshots and include them in the document, because they add a lot of information and it's nice.
Okay, thank you.
So, for example, with respect to the images, one where I struggled was when I looked at the video online of the car scenario. There was something I couldn't quite understand about the sketch you were using for the car, and in the YouTube video, it was really difficult to pause it and get a close up to see exactly how those
Yes.
arrows were pointing. So my impression was that you've represented the cars with these arrows behind the car to kind of keep other cars away from them. Can you go?
Yes,
Because was just something about that example.
Yes, I'm going to find it. Yes, here.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to go back to the slide. I need to do this. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Yes. So
Okay.
we have those three fields. So this is what you're talking about, I think.
Exactly. So the middle image, the one with the car is going in one direction and it has arrows pointing sideways and backwards.
Yes.
I guess
Yes.
to keep the other cars within a certain distance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This is it. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So my question is, why don't you have arrows also on the front of the car to avoid pedestrians to try to walk in front of the car?
To avoid the pedestrian. So
Yes.
this interaction fields is only impacted the other car. So this is maybe not clear actually. This field here is as sources the car, and it's only impacting the other car. So here, since all the other cars are gonna stop here, they don't have to have something also in front of them to make the other car stop, because themselves are gonna stop. So this is for the car side. The pedestrians actually do not respond to the car at all using interaction field in this example.
Okay. Now
They
it makes
only have
sense.
collision avoidance. Yes. Clearly, we could do something else. This is only we could have definitely field for the pedestrian emitted by the car. Yes, I took the principle that the car were doing the work and the pedestrian were just walking around. This is so we could have changed that. And the crossroad is not really, it's not a perfect scenario. I would say it was something that is very used in crowd simulation, the crossroad, but I definitely know that sometimes the pedestrian gets run over, for example. So it's not perfect at all. I just wanted to show you, to illustrate how we could combine with this crossroad. And it took me some time to do, but actually there are some, sometimes it doesn't work so well. It's because of the weight issue as well, sometimes. So here, if we could trigger on and off the field, it would be better for sure.
Okay.
According to
Now it makes sense. So that's actually following up with this question, and a little bit related, for example, with all the questions they already asked you about limitations. I was thinking it is hard maybe for you as the programmer to kind of predict all the limitations the system is going to have, because there's things that you might not have thought about trying to do with the system. So I was wondering if you thought about, for example, the user study. Two things about the user study. It's very nice in terms of seeing how a naive user can rapidly create behaviors with this method, and that you successfully proved that it works very well. Actually, I was wondering whether people expert in crowd simulation try the system, because it would be really nice to get their feedback on how much, how long they think it would have taken them to achieve similar situations with just whatever software they typically use, and just modifying, just programming all these different aspects on the simulation. So that I leave it there as an open issue for future work. That would be nice. But also I was thinking the user study, it's very constrained in the sense that you're asking participants to achieve a specific behavior that you already know can be represented with your system. So did you ask them, or when you gave them free time to play with the system, did you ask them maybe to try to do whatever they came up with and see whether they could achieve it?
Yeah, the very first part of the user study was here the GUI, try to do some stuff, try to understand by yourself how it works. So they draw a bunch of arrows, and usually here again they did not get the relatively stuff. So they were happy because they were moving according to the arrows, the guy, but they did not get that the engine were going to rotate, and so that the behavior is going to be changing according to the position of this reagent. So basically what they did was drawing free-handed guide curve, and it was not really, they did not really quite understand the method yet, so they did not do something that they benefited using interaction field, if I know if it's clear. But what I mean is that they basically just draw as if the environment would be the source and not as if the agent was going to move. This is what they came with first when they were given the GUI. So the results were not, it was not a good example of using interaction field.
Okay, but if they had done the same, like had free time after the specific task they had to do, you think maybe they would have come up with more original ideas? Yeah, maybe. I didn't, I know it's true, we didn't do that. Yeah, I know that sometimes with the user studies, they do that with the artist or professional to see if it could help the creative process of such artists. So it would have been really interesting. I think if we do, if I can at some point do a user study with professionals that will, in their work, could use interaction field, I would. It would be interesting for them. In my case, they did not care that much about what they could do with it, and I think, but maybe still the output would be different. I agree, but definitely if we could do that with artists that could use interaction field, I would have done this and when they could just be a free task where they could do whatever they wanted, and see if they came up with a lot of different behavior, and see if they had interesting new idea with that. I think it could be a good source of ideas on how you could extend, when they ask you about how can push the limits of this method, maybe some of the ideas they give you are things that you can easily incorporate in the system. Some others are things that just cannot be handled or included easily. So it could be, for future work, it could be a really nice way of getting the method extended. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to go through all my list of questions because many of them were asked already. But,
no worry.
Okay, so my other curiosity was, like I was saying, when you're working with social forces and rule-based models and so on, and you want to combine a lot of different kinds of behaviors, the biggest problem is to find a good balance between all the different weights that you have in your system. Because sometimes you find a nice balance that gives you a good simulation for a particular scenario, but as soon as something changes about the scenario, like there's a bit more density, there's a narrow passage, there's some opposite traffic, like something small changes about the situation, and immediately the weights you found are not good anymore. So I was wondering, in your system also, you're combining these interaction fields, and you're basically combining them in a linear manner. You mentioned also there are weights in the system. How are those weights being calculated, combined, adjusted? How much struggle does that imply in your current system?
Yes, definitely the weight could be improved only just by making so that they could be zero at some point, so that you don't have a field that is impacting another that is there anymore. It would be nice already to have that. For example, the crossroad scenario is using weight, but sometimes you really want the car to stop, and since there is still a bit the road that it's going to run or to be too close of a pedestrian, and this would be an issue. So definitely the weight should be kind of either adapted to have dynamic weight according to the simulation, or having this trigger on and off, as well as when I talked about during the simulation, would be a kind of having the weight on, changing the weight during the simulation, which is not the case here, which is an issue for the scenario sometimes. And this would go as well with this kind of scenarization, because when then you have to be able to more manage your interaction field over time, and then the weight, if they are fixed, this could be an issue. Yes.
Okay, so currently the weights are hard-coded, or can they be modified in the interface?
Yes, no, it's they are defined by the user in XML. So more or less, it's not hard-coded. Like it's not. You can change it, but it's not. Once you launch the simulation, you cannot change it. For example, we would say, but it's not in the code. It's in the thing that the user is supposed to handle when he sets the scene, when he sets which agent is source of which field is impacting which agent. This is where he also sets the weight of the field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. It's a bit of a combination between the XML and the current interface.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, definitely having the XML done in the GUI would be better. Something. I mean, having all the simulation scene being defined with a sketch tool would be way more intuitive and a necessity for the future.
Okay. So my next question actually is a bit related to the robots and the animals, but in my case is personalities.
Okay.
So, for example, your current interaction field, you define interaction field where when a person is moving, others try to hide, no? For just thinking of that example only. But maybe you want some agents to get scared very quickly and to run away very fast. Maybe you want others to not worry so much. Like you want that behavior, but slightly different based on the agent, so you can show a bit of heterogeneity. How will you handle that currently in your system?
Yes. So it's also about the variety of interaction field. So what I'm going to talk about again is the coloring of the vector according to the velocity. If you want to have another parameter, you could find another parameter to decide on this coloring. So the does it say the timidness or the shyness, of an agent could be a parameter on which you color, which you use as a scale to color your interaction field, for example. Something like that. We could think of those way of having this either the interaction field change a bit, and with the example of the hide and seek, change the speed at the end. Like if he's very scared, he will go faster behind the obstacle. And if he's not that scared, maybe he would be a bit slower to start moving. So it would be something as well we could do. That is already implemented, that could already happen according to some, we could already do that right now. And then as well find about way of doing this with more variety. I think it would be very interesting to do indeed, because, well, in a crowd you have a lot of various type of people that are not only one type. And variety is indeed a limitation right now of interaction field. Apart from this velocity aspect, it would be nice to have other type of, according to the agent to impacted, to have the fields that change. It would be interesting to have this, really.
Right. Okay. So I just have a couple more comments. It's not many more questions. One is, so not 100% related with the topic of your thesis, but I saw you capture this large animation database of movement that work well with interaction fields, which is basically crowd locomotion. So I was wondering, is that database going to be available at some point? Because others could be interested in testing it and using it.
I'm sure Julien will make it available.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I'm sure, yeah. It won't be mine anymore, but I guess Julien can make it available, right? I think. Yes, right. I think it's a yes.
Okay, just it's the kind of tools that are very interesting, because I mean everybody has access to the ones that come with motion matching already. But like you were saying, there are certain situations that you couldn't handle by that one, and that's why you build a new one. And it obviously takes a lot of time to capture all those animations. So yes, I think it's really nice for the community if these things are made open source and just shared. Okay, so my final comment or a curiosity is about your experience with the VR simulations. So you show the VR simulations and you've commented on how nice it is to, or it can be to create these interaction fields, to sketch these interaction fields in an immersive environment.
Yes.
But I was wondering, when you run the simulations in this case, did you run into many problems with the user experience in terms of presence and plausibility? So like, did you run into the kind of problems where people are more aware maybe of artifacts in animations or lack of facial expressions or things like that, that kind of can affect the overall experience instead of focusing on what it is that you care, which is the generation of these interaction fields?
Yes.
Did you notice
So you
any
mean
of this?
you mean when with for example the giant scenario in virtual reality that the people could test, right?
Yes, yes.
Or,
But
yes.
if you received any comments from,
Yes.
like aspects of the overall simulation that were kind of moving away from the point of your work.
Yes, yes, of course. For people, it's they don't specifically make the difference between the trajectory and the animation. So if something is off, for them, everything is off. So of course, we got some feedback about the animation. It was actually sometimes a bit jerky, it's true, and sometimes, for example, in Level Virtual, some professionals had animation systems that were very, very good, and us was not that good compared to professional and industrial. So it's true that sometimes we got feedback about the animation. About the interactivity, I think we always got good feedback about the fact that once you start having this kind of impulse, they start running directly. So they were, I think, happy about that, and this is where I separate the animation and the interaction fields that work still well according to the interactivity. So relatively to the interactivity that a user has with virtual characters, they were most of the time we had good feedback about this all the time. So I think that's why I'm happy about still the feedback and of Label Virtual.
Okay, because one thing you just mentioned, which is very interesting, is that interactivity is very important to make it feel more realistic, the overall environment. But actually, if you kind of had a trade-off there when it came to the motion matching, because motion matching works better if you can run a couple of simulation steps and see what the actual trajectory is going to be, and then you get a better animation. So you have that in VR, you have a big trade-off there between interactivity and the quality of the animation. So that's why I was wondering.
Yes, so yes, for that I changed a lot interaction field to be able to predict the motion according to the field, and to have motion matching work better. And it was a challenge as well. It took me some time, but I had this prediction as well of to make this final scenario. I could predict the motion of interaction field indeed. So this helped a bit the motion, as you said, a lot of the motion of motion matching.
Okay. All right. Very nice work. I don't have more questions, I think, so I'll let the
Thank you very much.
go. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuria. So I will give the microphone now to Carol O'Sullivan from Trinity College, Dublin. Carol.
Oh, thanks, Anatole. So hi, thanks very much, Adèle, for that really interesting presentation.
Thank you.
And I also had the good fortune to actually try out the demo myself when I was in Rennes recently.
Ah oui, c'est vrai. Yes, sorry, it's true. Sorry.
So I really like the work, really interesting. And a lot of the points made before you answered some questions. What I'd really like to ask about are two things. So
yes,
I'll ask you both of the questions at the same time, so then you can answer them. So the first thing was your treatment of competing work or previous work, right? So both in the thesis and in your presentation, I feel like it didn't go into enough depth on comparing with those previous approaches, and in particular, I was thinking about Takakumura's group's work. So the interaction patches, for example. So, I mean, I can't remember what you said at the beginning, what you presented at the beginning of, it was Hubert Shum and team, whether you referenced that at the beginning. I know you referenced it in the thesis, but you kind of say they did this, yeah? Yes. And I think it's very relevant, and it can do things like, handle things like physical interactions quite well.
Yes, yes, okay, I see.
So I think I don't think you referenced it there, really, did you?
Yes, no. I mean, I think I did in my not in my presentation, but in my manuscript. I think I did talk about it. Yes, maybe.
But it's in the related work session, and it doesn't say anything about
yes, definitely. You're right about the contact. I think at the beginning I talk about the trajectory in 2D a lot. Maybe that's why I did not get that close with this paper. But I think typically for the virtual reality, and how we could then, if we do the registering and all of that, it could be very relevant to see what would be the, if it can be compared with the Takamura's work, and see. And so I think indeed that it's because at the beginning I focused a lot on the 2D trajectory, and after that, it's true that for the 3D there are another kind of state of the art to take into account and to develop a bit more. If we are to do that in virtual reality. So you're right about.
I mean, I think what would have been nice to see would be something in your results section on comparison. I mean, and it's not that you have to implement them or anything like that, but just sort of put methods, just put together methods that do some part of what you're doing.
Yes.
You know, because it's not a case of your method being better than theirs or anything like that, but just to appropriately acknowledge what's good at doing what, and what's your main USP, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
That was my feeling there. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think most of the time, if we would compare this to other, for example, crowd algorithms that focus a lot on something, for example, collision avoidance and group formation, I don't think interaction field would be better, for example. So maybe that's why we did not compare that much. But the idea was more that interaction field allows you to do some things that you cannot do with what you have already. This is why I think we did not focus on this, on the comparison. But you're right that it would be interesting.
I mean, what I've seen done before in this kind of situation is maybe like some kind of a matrix where down here you've got the different approaches, and then up the top you can do this, and this, you know, and you know what I mean, like handle physical interactions, do this, do that, and then you put a tick, and there should be some columns that your thing can't do.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Okay, I will try to add this. When I have time.
I mean, that was my main point, and just from your in your intro as well, you were talking about the guy handing out flowers.
Is the video?
Yeah.
At the beginning? The balloon?
The human video, yeah. You had a guy handing, or balloons. It was balloons.
Yes.
So can your method handle? I mean, maybe not the physical interactions, but I mean, it should be easy enough to layer in a few additional. I mean, would the motion matching be able to let you do that? I think that's related to what you asked before.
So the motion matching technique focus a lot on locomotion animation. So typically it takes joints of the model animation. So here it's the hips and the foot, and it's with those joints that is looking for a fit in the library. So it doesn't look about the upper body animation. It doesn't look through that. So with motion matching, but you can have locomotion with always your hand, or try to really do the interaction and see if motion matching could take it at the right with the right interaction field. But no, I don't think it would be the best way right now with the motion matching that we use. We would have to find other kind of the more you have joints, for example, if you have all the upper body joints, the less fit you're going to find. So you're going to have need even more and more animation into the library. So at some point you would have to computational issue, I think, with too much.
So the one other example I was thinking of was, you know, Assassin's Creed, where he's walking through the crowd and pushing people out of the way. So that's quite a simple animation. I'm wondering, would you be able to amend your method to allow somebody to push people out of the way so that they only move when somebody's comes within a much closer distance, and then you could potentially pay quite a simple animation such as pushing or something, or could the person come right up against it?
In 3D still then in 3D? Yeah. In 3D, we could definitely do that with interaction field, but still the pushing with the end would be a bit difficult. But we could think of other animation techniques that would be triggered and have this pushing, like triggering animation according to the field you use. You could think of something like that, and according to the field you're using, then you use this animation of pushing, and then maybe it could be combined like this. It's true that right now with motion matching, still it's a bit difficult to separate the field and the animation really, and to have this pushing according to. But we could think of some ways. I think it would be nice to have this to couple more animation and an interaction field.
Yeah. And like Ludo had done some work in the past with turning your shoulders, you know, going through as well.
Yes, the shoulder, yes.
It could also be something kind of interesting to you.
Yes, it's true. Yes, it's but we could just have people doing with the stuff that Ludovic did and have the shoulder when they are. Maybe we could add the two and just have this with the shoulder. No, I think like we did. If we have crowd MP already, we could have the shoulder and we could add this maybe since it's Inria. It's Inria, right? Yes. So yes, yeah, it would be nice to have this.
All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol. So before leaving the floor to the advisors, I'm going to make also a few comments and questions.
Okay.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, Anne-Hélène, Julien, Claudio, and Ludo. It was a pleasure to have these interesting discussions and scientific exchanges during the lunch. And thank you, Adèle, for this presentation.
Thank you very much.
And it's really nice and well illustrated, in particular presentation with lots of very convincing videos showing the progression of your approach, starting from the concept, and also this interesting and teasing ideas also of introducing sketching-based approach for this non-verbal collective behavioral simulation.
Yes. Thank you.
So I have 3 rapid questions. The first one was about, indeed, this very hypnotic video of the walking in this London street here.
Put it again, maybe.
It's still about the limitations and where you can get with your method today. So if you look at this video, how much of this video are you able to simulate? You have shown us like, I don't remember, like 15 or 20 different behaviors.
Yeah, and, actually, I think, sorry.
Yeah, how much of it are you able to simulate, like in terms of percentage of this different behaviors?
Using interaction field. Yes, if I could do that with scheduling, I think I could do mostly of it, confidently. But I think I could do basically having people that are source of a field that attract this element to each group. And once it is at this group, I turn off this field, so it is not attracted to this group since it already reached this group, for example. This would be doable with interaction field. The same for grabbing a paper, you go. Once you grab the paper, you leave, so you're not attracted to this flyer person anymore. So a lot of interaction field could be done like this. The children going around, but it would maybe be a bit randomized a bit. And I don't remember all the queuing. We have some solution for queuing already in the state of the art, but we could do, I think, a lot of this if we had scheduling, because it's a huge scenario at this point. And with interaction field, we have small behaviors. If we had to add them over time, we could have, I think, a convincingly amount of the behavior simulated using interaction field.
Okay, thank you. And regarding the VR setups in the end, so I was wondering what would be the user study you would propose in this line of research? Like what would be according to you, the main added value here, or the topic of interest for making an evaluation of this kind of approach versus maybe more traditional interfaces?
Yes, so thank you for your question. I actually thought about the user study. I really thought I would do them at some point. We were thinking of publishing the virtual sketching in interaction field. I could not have the time, but there is several aspects that we believe the virtual reality could benefit the users. We would check, for example, if indeed the trajectory would be better using virtual reality, if they would prefer using the 2D or the virtual reality. And then there is the idea if it will change if it's naive participant or expert participants that are used to virtual reality. When you're used to virtual reality, you already lose the kind of lost feeling that you have when you never try virtual reality. So I think that still the 2D for naive participants that that don't have this knowledge of virtual reality, they would prefer this sketching interface, maybe 2D, because it's more what they are used to. In virtual reality, we still think that we could have more refined interaction because you can test the interaction while you are in it. So maybe you will have something more realistic or more interesting because you can feel, for example, already exactly how a virtual character can behave to yourself. So I think it's interesting to have that and to see if indeed we have a difference between the fields that are sketched. And then I would love to have experts in proxemic study, for example, because I think they could benefit this really being involved in the virtual reality scene. And so we had a lot of ideas for the user study. We had 2 ideas, one with experts and one with naive participants. We would not ask them the same thing, but we would be able to see if it's more intuitive to use 2D or the acted already, to see if what would be the difference in the field between the two. It would be interesting. And yes, so yeah, I thought about that. so yeah.
Okay. Obviously. And my last question is a double question. It's if you step back a little and you look back in your PhD evolution and program and your experience of the PhD, so what would be the worst souvenir and what would be the best souvenir of these past 3 years?
The worst is so easy. It would be COVID. We had 2 years of COVID over 3 for all the people that will graduate this year. I did not like that. I did not like that.
Difficult to study collective behavior.
Yeah, difficult to have collaborative work with people, difficult to do a lot of things. And yeah, so that would be a part that I didn't like. The best would definitely be, maybe, I think the best, I don't know, because I don't have all my memory right now, but lastly, we do the Fête des Sciences, and I had children try it, and they were so happy with the interaction field, and this made me very happy. They really tried to catch the people. I wish I could have done, they were trying to slap them in the hand. I wish I could have made them disappear when they slapped it too, but yeah, I couldn't. But this was very, very, very great. This was very good memory.
Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank
answers, and good luck for the next steps.
Thank you.
Time for the advisor. So we start with Ludovic Hoyet, research scientist at Inria.
So first, so thank you for the presentation, Adèle.
Yes.
Congratulations. I think it was a really clear presentation, as it was said by a lot of people. You really clearly defined the scientific problems that you are tackling. You really presented a lot of examples, and you provided a really nice solution to the problem. What you did during your PhD actually gives a really new approach. I think it was mentioned by a lot of people here. And for us in the team, it has a lot of potential. It actually opens up a lot of opportunities and new things that we can explore. As was mentioned, a lot of applications as well in terms of robots, animals. In my case, what I really like is that it also opens a way of now actually working on a new way to create variety. And I think that was something that was mentioned. So I think it really has a lot of potential applications that really interesting for us for the future.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, because as you said, I think it's not easy to do a PhD in this context. You spend 2 years almost in lockdown, like the collaborations were really difficult. So I think congratulations to everyone who managed to actually go through 3 years like this and reach the end. And what I really hope is that I know that we discussed at the beginning of your PhD and sometimes from time to time, you are kind of wondering as well as what the PhD could bring you in terms of skills. And I hope that after going through all that you showed us today, it kind of really was able to show you everything that you can do in 3 years and the results that you reach, and that it can actually open up a lot of opportunities for you in the future. Because I know that you want to work a lot on artistic side and so on. So I hope that it kind of opens the doors to what you want to do in the future.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right after it's Claudio Pacierotti, research scientist at CNRS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adèle. You did a very, very nice presentation, very clear.
Thank you.
Lots of animation that really took us on this journey, of animated journey that you have presented today. I think it was easy to understand what you've done. I know that it was not very easy to do it. And so, of course, as Ludovic was said, of course, it was not easy to do all this work throughout COVID. It was not easy to do it, with so many advisors. can be challenging sometimes, but it's always good to have so many different views, especially when the work, of course, is multidisciplinary in this sense, tackling a lot of aspects, both in crowd simulation, VR animation, user studies, and so on. So great job at combining all these different aspects in such a good work. I have just one, it's not a question, just one wondering about, the last part, a bit the future. It seems very nice, very intuitive, the sketching itself, right? So what would you see it after that, if you could have, like 3 more years after the sketching to have something even more intuitive to define this behavior? You think we could tell, like with words, for example, the agents, what they could do? You think it would be better to show as you started to have done? If you would have, like infinite, a great group of people and time, where do you think that this can go maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? What would be your vision about your work?
Yes, well, so it's true that there are solutions from. We thought about the speech-driven kind of interaction field that maybe you could describe. It would give you an interaction field. I have a fellow student is working on having interaction field, and from crowds and being able to author it from real trajectory using machine learning, Marilena. So she's working a bit on that, I think. Then. About intuitive for the 3 years, actually, maybe I wouldn't mind trying this virtual reality concept of maybe really acting yourself the interaction, because I actually think that virtual reality to sketch is not that great right now, because the mind sees 2D and you have to do it 3D. It's not that well working together, but maybe to act. Really, it would be a good way of having an intuitive things in virtual reality, maybe. So to explore that, it would be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. We move on to Anne-Hélène Olivier, associate professor at University of Rennes 2.
Merci, Adèle.
Merci.
So thanks a lot, first the jury, for accepting
Thank you.
being here today, and
Thank you, jury.
for your really constructive and inspiring feedback.
Yes.
So I think you should see now that your work is really good, and you should be maybe more confident and proud of your work you have heard there are a lot of really positive feedback, a lot of perspectives.
Yes.
So you should be then happy and proud of the
I'm
work performed.
I'm very happy.
So I think it was to say that. And okay, as you said, so we are 4 in the board, but we have also Wouter and
Yes.
Katia who help a lot. So I think they're here, so
Yes.
will show their involvement in the project. So it's good also to thank them.
Thank you.
They don't have the opportunity to go to the restaurant and being sit here. So Ludo and Claudio say already a lot, but maybe I have to say that. So you have one of the creative students of the team. So I think your tool and this artistic aspect really echoes with your tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you also go to a new step, being able to see the application when going with people trying your work. So I think COVID has a lot of drawback because you can't interact with the people using that. But as you can see, there are a lot of potential. And especially in VR, I think you can really think about great experiment or maybe having collaborative work, design in VR. So
Yes.
I really think there will be next studies and good potential. So maybe to add two other points. So my kids try. So
Yes.
they were in the picture.
They are in the picture.
So they really do it just with a small instruction on the sheet of paper. So I think you still should say that it's intuitive. And
Yes.
No, they are just playing to Candy Crush, so I'm not sure it's the same. And maybe finally, you maybe as a team member in the life of the team, you are really involved in this collective aspect. You were involved in the design of the logo also of the team, so I think it's important to note also.
Yes.
It's important in the life of the lab.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Hélène. Last but not least, Julien Pettré, Senior Researcher at Inria.
Thank you very much. I can only say the same comments that you had before. So let me also say that you were able to improve more your presentations since the last time we saw it. So
Yes.
Congratulations on this.
You still help me a lot.
No, but it's always great to see some improvement. And
Okay.
yes, well, you reached a very nice presentation. Congratulations for this. I had three comments, one question.
Yes.
And even though it repeats a bit with what has been said before, I
Yes.
will go through them.
Okay.
First comment was the COVID area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true, impacting a lot PhD, and we should remind indeed that you were one of those students. I went through it, and it's difficult to go through it, and you were successful in going through it. So
Thank you.
in the end, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Even though this video you are showing is from the pre-COVID area, right?
Which one?
The
The
one-
street of London?
The video of London is.
Yes.
So we
There is
we
no
can,
mask on
we
the
can
face.
remind of how nice was the time pre-COVID. Okay.
Sorry.
Actually, the COVID prevented us to have those physical meetings in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how important they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my second comment, because I like to disclose a bit how the ideas came. And it came during those kind of meetings we had with you at the beginning of the PhD.
Yes.
And I'm so bad at doing the maths on the blackboard that I was always drawing how agents were behaving. And we thought that, could be an idea to actually sketch instead of
And the whiteboard. Yes.
mathematically describe what agents are doing. Would be better to draw it.
Right.
So, and you successfully demonstrated the idea. And then third comment, we had to convince Wouter that it was nice to do this and to help us a bit with implementing this idea. And so you successfully convinced him. But that's
Forced
an
him.
occasion indeed to say he helped with this. quite significantly, and it's important to thank him for that. And I discovered entering the room, he was there. So welcome to Rennes. Yeah, that needs to be mentioned. Then I have a question. I hate people that express their frustration, but I have a frustration that I will express here, which is the following one. We spent quite some time discussing all this, and you had the question, right? What is this method can do or can't do, right?
Yes.
And so we had the question in the reviews of your papers, by the way. So we saw a bit about it. And the way we answered it is, we tried to answer it was to watch for hours of YouTube videos of train stations, streets, and I discovered these videos you had that you never disclosed. Actually, that there was the one of the street of London.
Okay.
So yeah, so we spent hours looking at that and say, yeah, we can do this, we can't, we can. So the bodyguard scenario comes, for example, from the video of the visit of Jacques Chirac in Israel, where he has his bodyguard and we are missing the photographers in front and so on. And after this discussion, I was really expecting that you would play more with the method, play more, produce. So yeah, it was said you had plenty of examples, you had plenty of results, enough to demonstrate the idea. But I was really expecting you would play more with the tool. So can you try to have this honest answer? Yes. What prevented you from playing more with your tool, which is fun, in my opinion? Of course, maybe this is work in your head, so it's not like playing. But yeah, why didn't you play more with your method?
I was not expecting this question. I felt like I played. Maybe I don't know how to play. I don't know. I don't know. I had fun with it anyway. So in a way, I played. Maybe I did not try enough to have. I don't know. It takes a lot of time to set the things. That's this I would say, which is not fun. But sketching the field, I feel like I played a bit. Maybe, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any real answer about that. Sorry. I would play more with it.
That's fine. That's fine as an answer. Thank you.
That was an honest answer. Okay, so it's time to close this session of presentation and question, as the jury is going to deliberate in another room, and we will come back here to give the result.
Okay.
My remote colleagues, please disconnect from this Visio and reconnect to the other link of the deliberation. Okay? See you in a couple of minutes there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, can we have a 5 minute?
Okay, so the jury has deliberated. The jury found that your presentation was very clear, pedagogical, well illustrated. It complements very well your manuscript, notably via your numerous videos and very convincing videos. And the presentation highlights your progressive approach and the main contribution of your manuscript. It also demonstrates the interest and the complexity of simulating collective non-verbal behaviors. Your notion of interaction fields enables to produce several and numerous actually contributions of different nature, ending up with a complete pipeline, starting from theoretical foundings, animation algorithms, graphical user interfaces, user study, and even a functional prototype compatible with a VR setup in the end. Then we also would like to underline and stress the novelty of introducing a sketching approach in the field of collective behavior simulation. That was very appreciated. And in the end, we believe that this original approach is opening sorry, my computer turned off. So this original is opening a lot of research perspective. It should be really inspiring for future students and developers of such kind of technologies. And during the question and answer session, we found that you responded to the numerous jury's requests in a solid and constructive manner. And you demonstrate your maturity and your good grasp of your research area. For all these reasons, and now I'm going to say this in French because it's the tradition here, pour toutes ces raisons, le jury est unanime pour que vous soit décerné le grade de docteur de l'Université de Rennes 1 dans la spécialité informatique. Félicitations. Voilà pour nous. Maintenant, on passe le micro. Si tu veux dire un petit mot.
Thank you very much to the jury. First, really thank you to have read all of the manuscripts, 150 pages, so it's a lot. Thank you very much for being here with your busy schedule, and Rohmer as well, sorry. Thank you very much. Anatole as well. Nuria, Carole, and Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate, because I know you took some time of your agendas, so big and full. So thank you very much for that. And now I'm going to thank maybe in French, if that's okay. Merci du coup à mes encadrants, à Julien pour son expertise, pour son, je veux dire background du coup, non, son... Ce qui est derrière toi, c'est scientifique qui m'a vraiment beaucoup servi. Merci beaucoup à Anne-Hélène, qui je pense a pris de plus en plus la direction de ma thèse. Je suis fière d'être, je pense, la première officielle doctorante, quelque chose comme ça. Mais quand même, plus ou moins. Sous ta direction, bon, alors je suis pas fière, je suis contente. Merci. Quand même, j'ai vu trois de mes encadrants passer leur HDR sur mes 3 ans. Donc moi, je vous ai vu grandir aussi. Et je vous ai vu aussi prendre des galons. Donc voilà, je suis contente d'avoir vu tout ça. Je sais que vous allez continuer à superviser des gens, des doctorants avec la même bienveillance, la même patience. Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. Je suis un peu partie off script. Vous avez... oui, vous étiez toujours disponible pour moi. Merci beaucoup. Ouais, merci beaucoup. Je remercie Marc qui est pas là. Mais je remercie quand même Marc qui était unofficiellement peut-être un peu dans mon encadrement, qui a quand même été là aussi. Nathalie, Gwenaëlle, qui ont été mes assistantes, qui m'ont aidé pendant là où j'avais des questions, des soucis. Maintenant, je vais remercier aussi un peu, je vais commencer par ordre chronologique. Merci à mes parents. D'avoir toujours été là, merci beaucoup comme aujourd'hui. Merci à mon frère qui m'a aidé avec mes devoirs de maths, je me rappelle, en prépa. Merci à ma grand-mère, Mamé, je suis très contente que tu sois venue, merci beaucoup Mamé. Après, merci à mes collègues et mes encadrants de stage, Quentin, Fabien et Marwan, qui m'ont finalement donné envie de continuer en thèse, c'est un peu grâce à vous. En plus, merci beaucoup à mes amis de lycée qui se sont déplacés jusqu'ici, de Paris, bon, même. Donc merci beaucoup d'être venus, Diana, Catherine, Viviane. Et puis je dois remercier tous mes collègues sur 3 ans, tous mes collègues qui m'ont beaucoup aidé à garder le moral avec le Covid aussi. Franchement, c'est grâce à l'ambiance à Inria que c'est sympa d'être ici. Et puis du coup, il y a mes co-bureaux avec qui on partage beaucoup, comme un bureau d'abord. Et puis il y a Thomas, il y a Alberto, il y a Raph au premier lieu qui peut-être est sur YouTube, je sais pas. Mais voilà, franchement, c'est dans le bureau, on partage plein de choses. Et par exemple, avec Alberto, j'ai partagé quand même 3 ans dans le même projet, donc c'était super sympa. Puis Thomas, il a partagé son café avec moi, c'était sympa aussi. Puis il faut aussi remercier tous ceux qui m'ont aidé, qui m'ont appris. Donc c'est Katia et Wouter et Julien Bruno aussi. Donc, Wouter, il a été, comme on a dit plusieurs fois, il m'a beaucoup aidé sur toute l'implémentation dans Humans. Et franchement, j'aurais pris 3 ans de plus peut-être pour le faire sans lui. 2 thèses. Donc et puis donc voilà, merci beaucoup Wouter. Et puis à tous mes autres amis que je me suis fait ici, comme Diane qui est venue des Pays-Bas, comme Wouter d'ailleurs, ils sont tous les deux venus ensemble, à Solène, et à tous les chiens que j'ai gardés, merci beaucoup, à Maxime Roby qui avec ses 180 secondes, à Ludovic, le nouveau docteur qui je sais pas. Ah, il est là. Merci Ludovic. Et puis tous ceux que j'ai croisés aussi, qui sont venus à Inria, comme Béa et Marie-Léna. Et puis aussi tous les nouveaux, comme Salomé, Asna, Elodie, Philippe, Alexis, tous ceux qui vont continuer ici, sans moi. Non, mais merci beaucoup. Et bon courage pour la suite, bon courage pour Louise, pour sa défense. Bon courage aussi à Thomas, il y a Daniel aussi qui passe. Merci à Gwendal, Daniel est parti. Bon courage à tous ceux qui vont défendre cette année. Merci. Bon courage. Et puis merci aussi à ma maman, à Thomas, à Monique et à Clément qui ont organisé tout le pot quand même. Donc vous allez pouvoir vous régaler, je crois, j'espère. Normalement oui. Et donc voilà, donc je peux vous inviter au pot maintenant. C'est ça, hein, je peux vous inviter au pot. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Le pot, c'est en salsa. Voilà. Merci beaucoup. Bah, c'est maintenant.
It's time to say goodbye to online people. Thank you, Nuria, Carol, and Chris for being there. And thank you, Tyrant, for streaming this.
Ah oui,
Bye,
thank you,
see you very
Tyrant.
soon.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Adèle.
Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And Adèle, by the way, you are also my very first woman PhD
Ah ouais
student.
Ah bah c'est ça que j'aurais dû dire. Je me suis trompée sur le...
Yeah. Yeah, as a director, yes.
Okay,
Voilà.
you need to improve your stats then.
Yeah, you will learn me how to do it.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.